Welcome back, everybody, to Ravenstar's Witching Hour. I'm your host, Solaris BlueRaven, and I'm here with my special guest, Steve Colbern, my alien brother from another mother. Hey, Steve, I'm so glad you're here tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm appreciating hearing you. And
my pleasure. Anytime.
Yeah, you're brilliant, and I love listening to your scientific mind because it just spins my wheels in the right direction. So thank you for being you. That's very important. It's rare. It's hard for people to be themselves, sometimes, and I think it's really important that people shine their, their bright intellect, shall we say? So you were talking about the Tesla technology associated with the submarines, is that right?
Yeah, the U.S. government in the 1960s rebuilt Tesla's Wardenclyffe and Colorado Springs type system in order to communicate with submerged submarines at sea, and that was one of the things one of the first things Tesla did with it. He reportedly communicated with a submerged submarine in the Mediterranean in the 1930s. With a less sophisticated version of the, maybe it was the Wardenclyffe tower he used for that, but in any event, he used it for that purpose as well, so he demonstrated that ability. And that was probably the only thing about the system that interested the U.S. government.
Mm-hmm.
One interesting thing about that type of a system, too, though, is that you get out more power than you put in. That's why he called it a magnifying transmitter. It was capable of transmitting electricity or communication anywhere in the world and putting out more power than was put in.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. And they're still deploying it, of course. But, it's fine if they use it for the positives and not the negatives. I don't have a problem with technology at all. It's just how it's been deployed throughout the centuries,
Well, J.P. Morgan initially financed the construction of a Wardenclyffe tower, and then when he found out exactly what it was for and what it was capable of, he immediately pulled Tesla's funding because he didn't want a source of electricity that was that cheap that could not be metered.
That's so sickening to me.
Yeah, it is very sickening. They want only large centralized power sources that have to have wires so that you know exactly who the electricity is being delivered to and make sure everybody's paying for it.
It's like, yeah. You know what it reminds me of, Steve? It's like we have supercomputer minds. We have souls that are infinite and immortal. And these guys want to sit there and nickel and dime us to death about things that we naturally have accessible, by universal law.
Wouldn't it be great if your electric bill were, if there were no wires to look at and your electric bill were half or a fourth what it is today, or maybe even less than that? And all you would do is stick a pole in the ground with a few capacitors tuned to the right frequencies, and you can power your house.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the beauty of it. Yeah, and nowadays it's just
environmentally destructive, and
right.
There'd be a lot of advantages to it.
Well, I really believe we need to do that. I don't know how it's going to happen, but that's what really the solution to this equation on Earth is, that we need to do that. We need to come forward with the free energy and go in the direction we were supposed to go in. Now, I don't know if that's going to happen because it seems to me like everything is going down the sewer. But if it means terraforming and going to another planet to do it, then so be it. But I swear to you, that's really what needs to happen. Nothing's going to get resolved on this world until we start moving in the direction of Tesla and on a positive level. And getting away from all this, psychotronic warfare and all the garbage and all the manipulation, all the wars. It's all about money. It's all about greed. I mean, you know it and I know it.
Yeah, we need to have people that are in the know band together. If there's enough of us, they can't kill us all. So, really, we need to be free. Ultimately, we need to be free, not just of certain technologies, but of the misguided notion on this planet that it's okay for a power elite that's less than 1% of the population to own everything, including the other 99%.
Mm-hmm.
That's one notion that the ETs are terrified is going to escape this world, and the other is violent religions like Islam. They don't want that to escape into the rest of the galaxy either.
It's really wild. Well, you know what? I get a sense that, people do need to be deprogrammed. Talk about mind control. I think everybody needs to be deprogrammed from the Earth Collective and start reprogramming with universal harmonics. That's my take. I think there's been too much mind control. There's been too much manipulation through religions and false belief systems. And you can say, well, the Bible says this and the Bible says that, and I don't judge people for what their beliefs are, but I will tell you, take a good look and see if that Bible wasn't written or channeled by an entity, and if it was, be very careful what you're doing, people, because don't act out in malicious ways if an entity is telling you to do something through biblical works. And I will tell you, and not to come down on the Bible, but it's censored. There's a lot of data in there that's not there, and people are getting lost. Just like anything else. I mean, if you read something, if you have a recipe for something and you don't have the entire ingredient, be careful, okay? That's all I'll say to everybody. I'm sure you would agree.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like recklessness across the globe. I see people with little pits, not pits, but little pieces and fragments of information that they don't understand what the heck's going on, and they're just they're not understanding the bigger equation of things, and that's a dangerous thing to do. That's a very dangerous thing to have little tiny pieces of something and then try to run with it. And you have to have the facts, and I just don't see people doing that.
Well, as certain people have said, there's nothing more dangerous than a dabbler.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
He doesn't have all the facts as he said, and tries to do something.
Yeah, I mean, you just kind of, well, I could go on about that, obviously, but I've heard from a lot of different scientists that they've suggested that we live in a dead universe, and it comes down to, have you heard of that before? That we don't have any extraterrestrial neighbors, and that this is an entire...
Oh, sure. I've heard of it. I think it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I mean,
I agree.
This evidence from Mars contradicts that, and there's also other lines of evidence of the infrared spectrum of cosmic dust, for example, is almost exactly like the infrared spectrum of dried bacterial spores.
Mm-hmm.
What about that comet that hit back in 2000 and spread some red organism all over the Kerala district of India? That organism was not even life as we know it. There was no DNA in it. It could survive at 300 degrees Celsius, and it seemed a perfect organism to be suited for life in space.
Yeah, I agree.
What about the balloon-borne experiment that the Indian Academy of Sciences did back in the 1990s, where they measured the density of bacteria between sea level and 100,000 feet using a balloon? It turned out that the density of bacteria goes down between sea level and 50,000 feet, as one would expect, but after that, the density starts going up again. So obviously, bacteria are falling through space.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy's partner that did the experiment, Fred Hoyle, was one of the smartest people that ever walked the planet. He was like another Tesla model is. He's an astronomer. He swore up and down that there were bacteria on comets. He had data that indicated that there were disease outbreaks that would parallel close passes of comets by Earth. And he may well have been correct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get the sense that that's not correct. Also, with a dead universe, I don't see it as dead as it's alive, obviously.
I rather think that microbial life is everywhere, and everywhere you have some air and some water, you're going to have complex life forms as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's been my working hypothesis for some time, anyway.
Yeah, I was wondering about that because to me it's all about consciousness anyway and intelligent energy. So that there's so many different facets to what we think is alive and living. And like I said before, if it's frequency based, if it's vibrational based, then obviously there's a lot more to that than what people realize. But yeah, I wanted
beyond that, the entire universe probably is intelligent. That's what you could call it, God, or call it what you will. But
exactly,
the entire universe probably has some sort of consciousness to it.
Oh, I totally agree with that, and we're an extension of that. So how can we? We can't be separate from that which we are. That's the bottom line, and we are an extension of the universe, whether we like it or not. We're a miniature universe within. So I think Philip K. Dick comes to mind, and I mention him often because I love Philip K. Dick's work, and of course VALIS, Vast Active Living Intelligence System. Remember? I don't know if you ever read that or not. But anyways, that's really what it boils down to is something with an intelligent design, that we are all connected to and interconnected with. And that's why I think when man starts to act under his free will to control, manipulate the masses to such an extent with this type of censorship, whether it's NASA or Mars, it's got to backfire. It's going to backfire. It's against universal flow.
Yeah, I just wish that would backfire pretty soon. I'm tired of this whole system just like you are.
Yeah. I agree. It gets to the point where
off a cliff, basically, and they're paid for an economic point of no return, if nothing else.
Mm-hmm. Well, part of the ascension process, if you look into ascension, this isn't New Age, by the way, this is mystical alchemy, but the ascension process itself, is about letting go of the old and linear programming and embracing the new higher consciousness. And in order to do that, the systems need to fail. In other words, they all need to go away. Money needs to go away. Governments need to go away. Religions need to go away. And you see that happening. I hate to say it, but it is happening in alignment with universal law, although it feels uncomfortable to everybody. So that part's...
Well, just about everybody I know agrees that this system has to die before something else comes into its place that's better. This system won't let you fix it. It's self-correcting to be as bad or worse as it was before if anybody tries to change it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think so. I think it just needs to be flushed, quite honestly. And the whole thing, it's a point of no return, and that's on a global level. There's just no point.
If the game is corrupt enough, eventually somebody ought to just turn over the table and start one someplace else.
Mm-hmm. And we can do that, certainly can as a race. But that's once again, it takes action and motion, and it takes the energy to do it. But I think the universe is actually moving that. Now, a lot of people are all superstitious about this Grand Cross and this and that. I was born under a Grand Cross, so, I guess it's a good time for me.
You were born on what?
I was born under the Grand Cross that they're talking about coming up. So it's like... You
mean with the 4 lunar eclipses this year? Or?
Yeah, well, I was born under a Grand Cross, and my birthday's on the 20th of April. So, basically I have some... what people are afraid of, I'm like, well, it's like not a big deal. Literally, it's just another transition, that's all. But I think people need to make, they need to make friends with change, and they need to start moving on and beyond their programming. And that's really what it boils down to, is that they're being programmed and they're being triggered by governments, by the actions of governments from day to day. You see it, I see it. And it's like, you just got to look at it for what it is. You see the man behind the curtain, you pull the curtain and you watch it and you say, this is enough of this crap. We're done. That's it. It's a relationship that needs to sever.
Anything special happening on May 4th? That's my birthday.
I'll have to check it out for you, but I'll be sure to give you an update. I do timeline astrology for those who don't know, and so I obviously know my own chart better than anybody could ever assess. But it's funny because I hear all these people, going on and on about the Grand Cross and this and that, and, it's not as bad as what people think it is. It's basically where you're at in your perception of reality, and what your belief systems are is really what is going to be the foundation of what's going to happen to your reality. So,
When is the Grand Cross occurring, on April 20th?
Supposedly on my birthday, yeah. Mm-hmm. So we'll see what happens. But, I'm sure, to me it's just like a reboot. I'm fine. If I leave this planet, I'd be extremely happy.
Earth right now, there's a lot of earthquakes going on, a lot of big earthquakes hitting. Some people were saying that we're going through the plane of the galaxy, and perhaps the density of the continuum is greater here, and there's more heat coming out of the Earth as a result.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense also. And I don't know if you're familiar with the photon belt or not, but I was just talking to a guest of mine on my other show last week about the photon belt and a lot of things. And, a lot of people say, well, that's foo-foo ascension stuff. It's really not. It's actually legitimate ascension, higher consciousness data. And what
photon belt is probably a different way of saying the same thing.
Right, it is. We all speak the same language. That's the thing. You just have to, kind of reconnect it all. But the same thing, the source energy with the galactic center and things that are moving this energy. And what people don't realize is that the Earth is not alone. The Earth is a set. It's moving as a set with other planets and star systems. So we're all navigating to these levels of consciousness together. It's not, this Earth isn't isolated from anyone or anything. And that's what people tend to forget, that we are all interconnected and interweaved with these other races, species, planets. And that's why when they try to censor this data, I'm like, you guys are stupid. There's no reason for you to do that. Not at all. I think what it would do is shatter the belief systems of a lot of people, and it would really blow their minds to find out, what was happening, the civilizations on Mars, or even if they were our ancestors. Some people can't even grasp that, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's the same type of people that were represented by that lady I was talking about that believed my UFO information but didn't want to hear it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just like, well, I think denial is one thing. They like to live in those little little fuzzy bubbles, rather, and that doesn't work for some people. But yeah, that's really interesting. So, what else do you know about Mars that you'd like to share with us? Anything that comes to mind that you find is significant?
Well, there's a huge the face on Mars in Cydonia is not the only one. There's also a Nefertiti face. I don't know offhand where on the planet that is, but it's a shallow relief face carved into the surface of Mars. It looks like an Egyptian woman with one of those long stovepipe type hats they used to wear on.
Mm-hmm.
And that's quite detailed. There's eyelashes and lips and just this complete never detail an earring.
Yeah, I saw
that. Obviously artificial.
I actually saw that somewhere. I can't remember where I saw it. It might have been on Facebook, but that's interesting. So that's a legitimate picture?
Oh, yeah. It's been photographed 3 or 4 times.
Okay. Yeah, I always wonder.
It's something on the surface. It's not a trick of light and shadow or anything. It appears to be, come to think of it, it appears to be colored rocks or something that was spread on the surface to form this thing. It's got to be artificial. I don't see any other way around that. And there's also a face that's something like 20 miles wide in the Sirius Major region of Mars, one largest dark area of Mars, and that was taken by the Mars Global Surveyor. And that's in my a picture of that is in my paper on Mars. And NASA has been studying on these things, and a lot of these are on the official record, but people just haven't found it because you have to wade through thousands of images to find these things.
Or you have to talk to somebody direct with NASA. But did you say that before NASA gets their images, the NSA looks through them?
Oh, absolutely. When the image comes through the radio telescope from the spacecraft, there's computer programs and NSA agents that are at the source to tamper with the image and take out anything that looks artificial, or have human beings there to take out anything that the computers miss, and basically have final approval before it goes to NASA.
Wow, that's really pathetic. When you think about that, and then it reminds me of the telescope that they use, at the Vatican and everything else that just gets completely censored, with information, or false information, rather.
Yeah, it's very difficult to get uncensored information from space. I mean, the astronauts were seeing UFOs, for example, almost every mission, but you hardly ever heard about that.
Right. Exactly.
Back in the Apollo, Gemini, and Mercury programs.
Well, weren't they going through some sort of a brainwashing type session afterwards, or something that would compromise their memory?
I heard some of them were. I heard in particular Gordon Cooper went through a lot of brainwashing.
Yeah.
And there was a period when they could talk about it back in the 70s, and then they clamped down on them and told them don't say anything, lose attention, blah, blah, blah. So that's why we haven't heard anything from the astronauts lately concerning UFOs. But it was on TV that the Apollo 11 crew saw a UFO on the way to the moon. They were talking about it on TV, and Buzz Aldrin talked about it a few years ago again. And there's another incident where James McDivitt saw a UFO in orbit on Gemini 4, I think it was. But there's good reason to believe they're seeing these things almost every mission in the early days of the space program. And even during the shuttle program, they were seeing things. They had a NASA channel back in the 90s that gave continuous coverage of the space shuttle missions, and one of them showed a UFO, and they took the thing off the air after that. That was a pretty famous incident. Right.
Yeah. They're always there to just wipe away all the truth, aren't they? I just get tired of it, quite honestly. Well, and also, not that this is part of the topic, it's not, but that plane issue, that whole thing with the plane disappearing and all that garbage, to me, that's just a distraction. It's just basically, you see how many people are focusing their energy on that, and totally just, focusing on the illusion and spinning their wheels in the mud with mainstream drama from day to day. That's just a perfect example of deception, a deception game in motion.
Yeah, well, they do that with a lot of things. Every grisly unsolved murder that comes to the attention of the police, they put that all over the media to distract people.
Yeah, I get the feeling that everybody who's working a quote-unquote mainstream job is just literally spinning their wheels in the mud, even if they think they're doing something important. I mean, when it comes down to it, every single profession on the globe can be altered with instantaneous it's like a surgeon who can actually heal without using technology that he's exposed to from day to day. You know what I mean? It's like we're really living in a backward society. It's really going in a vortex instead of...
Oh, we are. I feel like I'm a scientist from Captain Kirk's time sometimes that's stuck in the 21st century. I mean, the company I work for, it's like you feel like telling them, can't you set your sights a little higher on, what you're trying to accomplish here? And it's like even the companies, it's not just the government, even the companies are deliberately dumbing themselves down to avoid stepping on the toes of the powers that be.
Yeah, I see that also. And that's what's really sad is that people try so hard to get jobs with these corporations, and then the people that are running the corporations are really incompetent, and they're not even qualified for their positions. And so then, you look at it, but it is a dumbing down, and it's a dumbing down on a global level. I'm thinking to myself, are they smarter in other countries? I don't know. I mean, but from what I've seen here in America, this is embarrassing. And I'm not saying everybody in America is not intelligent, but I'm saying, man, you guys, we used to be a real bright country, and I'm telling you, it's not happening anymore. So
we have gone downhill. I don't know if they're any brighter in other countries, but we're definitely as a society less intelligent than we used to be.
Yeah, and that's really scary because they don't have the intellect, and then they're getting censored, so they don't even have a database of truth. So what's left? I mean, honestly, when you think about it.
The most scary thing is that they have a bunch of political hacks running things now, whereas before they had some pretty bright people running things in this country. Now it's not what you know, it's who you know, and all that crap. So they have people at very high levels in government that they wouldn't have trusted with a potato gun in those positions before.
Exactly. Well, I'll tell you what. I guess we were supposed to be born on this timeline, but man, I'm not coming back to this planet. And I've said that before. That's it for me, man. Don't ever try to get me back here. It's not happening. This planet's it's a floating asylum, is what I call it. It's crazy. I just keep my sights on the universe.
It always was, but it's getting worse. So I totally agree with you.
Right. Well, when you think about it, I mean, if it wasn't really always that bad, and even with the quote-unquote Atlantean or whatever you want to call an advanced civilization, we had the Atlantean society. I don't think it was really that bad. Maybe there was a misuse of technology, and the city went down and this and that. But at one point, they must have had a very advanced, higher consciousness, celestial design. And I can't for the life of me figure out how it could have gotten this bad so quickly over the centuries.
Well, I think there was a technological civilization on Earth before that ended 12,000 years ago. There's quite a bit of evidence that that's the case. I think they were more advanced than we are now, and I think they had telepathy and more advanced consciousness and such, but we evolved since then, obviously.
Right. Yeah. Well, we are naturally telepathic. I mean, I can confirm that, plus the other artificial intelligence stuff that they try to deploy. But that's the sad part of it is everything we have that's a natural given, that's a natural gift, they try to mimic or create or do a better job of manifesting through their false technology. And it's just, it's pathetic when you think about it. So my sense is that they're trying to hoard a lot of archives of extraterrestrial data so that they can manipulate the masses even further. And what's your take on a Project Bluebeam? You think that's going to happen, like a false, maybe extraterrestrial dance?
Project what?
Like a false extraterrestrial event where they're synthetic extraterrestrials, not off-worlders, but actually manufactured by covert intelligence governments to create a false flag.
They could try something like that. I don't really know what they would gain by it. It's not their only possibility, but it's not something I think is going to happen personally. Yeah,
I don't think so either, but I do know that they've been doing a lot of, the transhumanism thing is really big, let's put it that way. And with transhumanism goes an artificial design which can be a mimic to extraterrestrials. So, I'm very skeptical about a lot of the stuff that they're doing these days with the modification of things. So, but what do you think the end game is insofar as our world?
I think the powers that be want to reduce the population according to the Georgia Guidestones, and that's basically their plan. They've announced it through that monument, and they want to basically just retain the people that will say how high when they say jump, and then the ETs also want to reduce the population, but they want to retain their abductees and hybrids to repopulate the Earth. So it should be interesting.
Yeah.
It goes on. But one way or the other, I think the population is going to be reduced, as we've discussed before.
Yeah, I think you're right. Well, I think it's already being kind of reduced. Actually, I see it as more of a slow bleed than a fast, quick death, unfortunately.
The chemtrails and the cancer viruses are spreading, and the crap they put in the food, and the dangerous drugs that they're pushing on people, it's all to reduce the population, in my opinion.
Right.
And the latest thing is they're trying to cause food shortages by approving all these pesticides that kill bees.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they've done so much damage to the DNA through all this manipulation and all the things that they're doing. And of course, the Fukushima thing is in the dust. Everybody doesn't pay attention to it. I have a sister on Maui, and I ask her all the time. I said, well, what's the story out there? I mean, what are you guys doing? Do you have a Geiger counter? And she says it's like they just pretend that nothing's going on. They don't give them any information. They say there's nothing to worry about. So, I mean, that's what she's being told on Maui. But I don't know. I mean, it's crazy. If there's something that's life-threatening, go ahead.
So far here in California, the radiation from Fukushima has hit rather inhomogeneously. In San Francisco, they've got about 30 times normal background, and on the Central Coast and around Oxnard, where I live, it's pretty much normal background. So for some reason, the San Francisco area has been hit hard.
That's interesting. Yeah, well,
I was up around Oregon, Washington's being really hard as well.
That could explain a lot of other things too that's going on. I know people have been having respiratory issues, things that are maybe chemtrail related, chemtrail flus, but also something else going on with the lungs and the capacity to breathe. I think there's a lot happening. I get the feeling our atmosphere is really bad right now, and I almost feel like we don't have an atmosphere. And of course, I live up high in the mountains. I live at a pretty good elevation, but I mean, I'm used to thin air, but there's something else happening. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, I think thin air might be good for starseeds.
Yeah, really.
I like space.
I don't think well, you know what? Another thing is too. There's been a lot of people have said we've been dropped off here. In other words, we don't belong here on Earth, and I kind of get that too. That maybe we're just not calibrated for this planet. Maybe that's why we have so many issues while we're here.
Yeah, that very well could be.
Yeah, I mean, it's my take that I do better elsewhere.
Yeah, there seem to be various types of starseeds, and some do better here than others, but in general, yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, I totally think we're on the wrong planet, which is kind of a bummer. But maybe this isn't a planet at all. Maybe it's like a terraformed asteroid. Who knows? Got to use your imagination these days. Tell you what.
Well, I think this is very important. The aliens have announced that this is a very important planet for a lot of species, and they don't want to see it screwed up.
Well, I'll tell you what, man. Something needs to give quick then, because right now this is a sad situation. I think, from what I've seen, I think actually the people are in the worst situation. I mean, the planet can recover. I mean, it will go through a transition, but it will recover. But the animals will suffer. And a lot of other things, and the people will obviously suffer. So that's really the biggest thing.
Yeah.
I don't know what your impression is on that, but yeah. Have you heard the tale of Earth having 3 moons at one time?
3 moons?
Yeah.
No, I've never heard of that.
Just trying to.
I know that they were talking about Earth having small moons orbiting much closer to the planet back in the 1950s, and those, I think, turned out to be gray motherships. They first discovered them when they developed radar powerful enough to track objects in space. And Clyde Tombaugh was put on the project, and NASA discovered Pluto, and then it kind of went black after that. Nothing more was said about it. So I think they discovered there were alien spacecraft orbiting the Earth.
That's pretty interesting.
As far as 2 other natural moons, no, I've never heard of that.
Yeah, I've heard it. I'm going to start doing more research on that. I swear I'm going to have a show on that because I've heard it before, and I saw it once, and I can't find it anymore, the information on it. So. But I'll be definitely looking into that because it's bothering me. It's, how you just get something and you need to keep researching it until you find more information on it. That's where I'm at with it.
Well, this theory about the moon forming from another planet hitting the Earth way back when is correct, and there might have been more than one before it coalesced into one.
Right. And then, of course, everybody, well, I'm under the impression that that's an artificial moon anyway.
Well, it's definitely partly artificial. I mean, the math is, the figures don't lie. I mean, the thing is at least 30% hollow or empty space, and the data is consistent with a rocky shell, maybe 50 to 100 miles thick, that's quite dense and almost metal-like, with extensive caverns below that, and either no core or a very small core. The NASA model for the interior of the moon is complete fiction.
Yeah. Don't you get
the stranger even than Mars? I mean, it's the strangest moon in the solar system by far.
I think so too, and that's what it is. It's very auspicious. Well, it reminds me of the Death Star too. I think that's where they got their design, didn't they? From Star Wars.
Maybe so. It's a great base. It's a major great base. It's a mining for resources for sure. Talking about the Death Star, there's a moon of Saturn called Ipetus, or Ipetus, that it totally looks like the Death Star, and photographs from the Saturn orbiter escapes me at the moment. But check out the pictures of that. It totally looks very much like the Death Star.
Right.
It even has a spot on one side that corresponds to the Death Star's main gun.
Interesting. Well, they call them satellites for a reason. And also, you think about it, it's almost like they're little like transceivers for data, and just kind of transmitting the information from planet to planet.
Well, Tom Gooden believes that the entire solar system is a giant scalar interferometer where energy is being passed from one moon or planet or sun to the next, and perhaps that's true.
I think so too. I get that also. Almost like a little, they're what they call the music of the spheres, don't they? Where there's different harmonics associated. Yeah. Yeah. And that music changes with the position of the planets. That would make a lot of sense. Yeah. And of course, if the frequency is altered, then something else would happen to the Earth or the planets around them, I would suspect. So if you alter the vibrational frequency code signature of the Earth, then that could be a benefit or not a benefit. Yeah, makes sense. I mean, that's just this is theory, obviously, but that's my take on it anyway, because I like sound and I work with frequencies a lot, and that's I know what it can do to people. And of course, we all know that we can heal with frequency, and we can destroy with frequency as well. Yeah, that's part of it. Well, that's part of why they never allowed Dr. Royal Life's cancer healing and disease healing system, is because you can also induce disease with the same system if you know what you're doing. Well, the sad thing is they already deploy, illnesses and sickness onto people. They can remotely take you out and murder you. So they have assassin programs that are remote tactical hardware. So, they're already deploying it. Well, some of that, Tom Van Flandern, who came up with the theory that Mars was once a moon of the original Planet 4 in that orbit, or a similar orbit, died a few years ago of a very fast-paced case of colon cancer, and that seems to be something that a lot of people in the UFO and paranormal field die of. Yeah, I've noticed that also. Yeah, mysterious illnesses. The past few years, a lot of people have been taken out by strange things, and frequency-based, I would think. Dr. Van Flandern briefly at the Central Coast UFO Symposium, and that was back in 2008, and he was dead within a year after that. That's odd. I guess he just got me cancer before I met him, so. Wow. That's too bad. Seems like a lot of brilliant minds are transferring out, but yet there are other worlds, there are other universes to dwell in. We just lost Lloyd Pye. He was the latest victim of their homicidal rage. I don't think his death was an accident. How did he die? Cancer, I believe. Okay. Yeah, that's too bad. Well, whenever you rub them the wrong way, and the sad thing about them, they're kind of strange. They'll torture you for years and years and years, and then when they decide they want to kill you, they just kill you. They're really strange. They're sick, They don't even have the integrity to take people out like with one shot, like a nice clean takeout. They have to torture first. They're just sickening. I swear. They're not even. Maybe the killings happen when a new boss comes online and they have to show their toughness or something. I mean, it's just craziness. And then you look at all these people, these bankers that quote unquote jump from buildings. Excuse me, what the hell's going on with that? What's up with that? Well, I wish all the bankers would jump off a building myself. That'd be great. It's just really wild, though. It's almost like surreal. It's my friggin' house. I'm not going to forgive him for that anytime soon. Oh, yeah, that stinks. Yeah, that's no good. Well, it's really corrupt. I'll tell you what, people are fighting just to maintain their own sanity in their homes and their lives. And, I think everybody just wanted to have a nice life. I don't think anybody had any great expectations of doing, having these wonderful, like, super rich lifestyles. But, even for regular people who just want a nice life, it's becoming impossible to even live. It's almost becoming a crime to be alive. It's becoming obvious they want to wipe out the middle class. It's becoming increasingly difficult to get a middle class lifestyle unless you're lucky or have something going for you beyond the normal Joe. Even people with PhDs are having problems making a living these days. Oh gosh, I know. I see a lot of people who are very educated who have, Well, if you don't work for the system and you're not part of the equation of living the lie, then you kind of get cast aside. And especially if you're out here and, talking about stuff that we talk about, well, there's a tendency to get blacklisted, and tell me about that. I mean, I'm well aware of that. So, I mean, if you know too much, it makes people uneasy.
they're just throwing enough good jobs to go around these days too, which is a scary thing.
Yeah, that's another thing in the U.S. especially, but I guess in other countries you might have better luck, or some of us would. I don't even think so anymore, though. I honestly think the only solution is to just zero out everything, restart it with free energy and higher consciousness, and just restructure everything from ground zero. That's my take anyway. I don't know if I'll see it in my lifetime, though. So what do you think about the full moon coming up?
Well, I can hardly wait.
Yeah, I mean the full blood moon.
On April 15th, tax day.
Oh, lovely, isn't it? That's probably why people feel so bad, right? It's the tax thing.
Could be. At least I'm getting money back. I was keeping my fingers crossed this year.
Well, it's really funny is like don't keep. They pay their taxes to an organization that is illegal to begin with, and I'm thinking, when you really look down on the whole situation, it's really just a fiasco. You're paying outside investors basically. Taxes should never have happened. They should have never had people pay taxes at all. Not at all.
Yeah, I really don't think that the income tax should have ever been levied on individuals.
No, it's basically ridiculous. It's a scam. It's the worst scam of the century. I mean, it's the worst scam in the United States, and people do it.
They never did quite get around the fact that that filing a return is against your right against self-incrimination. But they just kind of sidestep that fact and prosecute people anyway for not filing one. Well,
it's kind of like debtor's prison too. We never used to have one, and now they're trying to recreate one. Pretty soon it'll be illegal to breathe air, or they'll be privatizing water.
When I was a kid, people would just laugh at you if you'd ever seriously, with a straight face, say that there might be debtor's prison again in this country, and now it's come to pass.
It's ridiculous.
In some states, anyway.
Well, you know what? Prisons make a lot of money. That's why it's all privatized once again. I mean, you're dealing with that's an industry. It's not about crime. It's about making money, and that's what they're doing. It's ridiculous.
Well, my solution to that would be to let 90% of the prisoners out, bulldoze all the prisons, and just let everybody carry guns. And if somebody's breaking the law, then they get shot.
Right, it's like Mad Max.
Save the money on sending them to prison.
You remember Mad Max, right? The movie.
What?
Mad Max, the movie.
Oh, yeah. Totally.
Yeah, that's what it reminds me of. Literally, it's just every man for himself, or woman for that matter. But yeah, I agree. I mean, it's going to be, a lot of people predicted it would be like the Wild Wild West at some point. What's left of the earth. I mean, if you want to look at the breakaway society doing their thing, going off world, and then whatever's left here has to survive. So.
Sounds like fun.
What's that?
Sounds like fun.
Doesn't it? Yeah. Lock and load.
More fun than this, anyway.
Well, I think it's all going to get scrapped. I do. I think that we're on a very vulnerable point right now. It's a tipping point right now on this planet, and I think that things are definitely going to shift one way or another. But I have no patience for it. I find it to be a bore, quite honestly. It's frustrating and boring and ignorant and everything I don't like about being here. That's just me, anyway.
Well, these people are for the most part a bunch of panty wastes anyway, so.
So if we went from Mars to talking about other things.
Sometimes.
No, I agree. I mean, I'm just I think it's good to communicate this information because you know what? I'm sure there are a lot of people that are listening that resonate with this information. And honestly, if you live too long in the dream, you get sucked into the lie. And so.
I'm not talking about our listeners tonight, obviously. I'm just talking about the average person that doesn't care about anything.
Well, it's the people that are listening are usually pretty intelligent that connect into this station. But yeah, totally. It's just that they're all just in la-la land, and there's no patience for it. Even when I came out with the exposing this misuse of technology, I mean, some people can understand it, other people don't. Other people are afraid of it. The majority of people don't care unless it happens to them or their family. So I think that's what it boils down to. Unless it happens to you, you're not going to give a damn. And that's really what these people are at. I mean, if you take their television away, they'll come crying. But hey, as long as they have a TV set.
There'd be riots if they took people's television away. But
yeah.
They don't riot over government taking their rights away.
That's just it. They're so conditioned to be spoon-fed that they don't know what it's like to be free. They're not a free race. They're not free.
It's a brave new world.
Yeah. It really is.
Or an unbrave new world, I should say.
Yeah, well.
A cowardly new world.
I feel sorry for them. I have to tell you, I feel sorry for the people that are asleep, that are missing out on truth. I really do, because it's going to screw them in the end. It really will, and they won't get it. They won't get it. You spend your whole life living a lie, and then when you transfer out, you realize it was a lie. Oh my goodness! Thank goodness I know it's a lie now. So when I leave, I'll be real clear in my head.
Yeah.
That makes a huge difference. I'll have clarity when I transfer out. I'm not going to be one of these lost souls that'll be like, what happened? What was that program all about? What was the lie? It was a deception. It was a wake-up.
Well, I'm with you, Solaris. If I had a spacecraft, I'd be out of here.
Well, I have. I'm working on it. I'll swing by and pick you up. I'll get the mothership. Yeah, for sure. And then speaking of motherships, I know we've had. What do you think about all these anomalies that we've had? Like, it seems to me like there's been more and more people have UFO experiences. Do you think that's man-made craft from our governments, or do you think there's something with an off-world?
Well, it's anybody's guess. That my opinion, based on investigating a lot of cases, is that maybe about a third of them are government-made from the secret space program, and the rest are alien.
Mm-hmm. That's real interesting. I'm wondering
There's
about
definitely more alien craft up there than government, in my opinion.
What do you think about the black triangle? You think that's ours?
Some of those are ours, yeah.
Yeah, I get that too.
The really big black triangles are alien.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Do you have any idea? Go ahead. No, I was going to ask if you know what species that is that occupies that craft.
They're great craft, from what I understand.
Interesting.
Most of the alien craft up there are gray that people report seeing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've noticed there's been a lot more activity as of late with people witnessing certain things. And, of course, I'd like to know, my question is, why aren't they interacting? And I know people like to say, well, there's a contract. Well, I'm not buying the contract because we are celestial descendants of these off-world species, which means they have a right and authority to help us out when we're in a situation where we need assistance, basically. If we need backup, then they are obligated to help us. What's your impression of that?
I don't know if they're obligated to help us. In fact, I think that they have kind of a non-interference directive that the only reason that the Greys are able to violate that as much as they have been is so they have permission from the government down here.
Right. I've got go ahead, Steve.
Go ahead.
I have a mystery caller who's not a mystery at all. This is my friend here, Steve Travis. He's also a producer and a host here at Revolution Radio. Steve, how you doing?
Hey, Solaris. Hey, Steve. How are you?
Oh, great. How are you?
Oh, I'm good.
How can we help you? State the nature of the medical emergency, as they said.
I was hearing your frustrated rant about like people not knowing how to be free or whatever, and I had a quick story I wanted to share with you of something that happened to me tonight, which is a good example that you guys can just work off of, if I may, for just a moment.
Sure, but we're getting low on time, so make it fast.
Very fast. Very simple story. So, I live over here in Connecticut. It takes me about an hour or so to get to Brooklyn, New York, and my friend invited me out to a show. Now, I'm a free man. Even though I use my vehicle, I don't carry ID with me. So I go all the way out to Brooklyn with my boy to go to this show down in the city, one of those like bar show kind of things, right? And of course, the bartender or the bouncer at the bar asks me for my ID. I said, I don't carry ID. I'm a free man. And he says, well, I can't let you in without ID. So I'm stuck outside. I wait around for about 5 minutes. I see one of the bartenders come out who I recognize him from the several times I've been to that bar at other shows where I haven't been asked for ID. and I hope that he recognized me. I say, hey man, how's it going, dude? You know me, right? I've been here. I've been to this bar several times. And, and I'm definitely not 16. People like, I got a full beard here. It's just like, there's no way I'm under 21 in anybody's universe. And that's the only thing that they really care about. And he's like, oh no, I'm sorry. That's policy. I'm like, whatever. And it's just like, people are so scared of the cops. They're so scared of like these bureaucrats that come after people. And it's just like, you're turning good people away just because I'm a dignified man. I'm a free man. I want to roam about on my own. I don't need to carry ID. I don't need to answer to anyone but God. You know what I mean? And so
if more people were like you, then we wouldn't have to carry ID.
I got turned down from going into a show that I was invited out to.
Well, that stinks.
Yeah.
That's no good.
Teaching.
To stand up to them. Just ignore their directives is the best way to fight them.
I agree. Yeah, do not comply. It's really what it boils down to.
Unfortunately, that's up to the owner of the bar, though. If I can't talk to like one of the bartenders who's basically in charge of what the bouncer does, and I can't get him to use his noodle instead of just thinking about, codes and process procedure, he's all worried about, serving to people under 21, which, dude, that's not going to happen with me. And, anybody can look at me for 3 seconds and know I am well over 21.
Well, that's the kind of stupidity we're talking about, and it's growing by leaps and bounds every day.
Yeah. New York's a big part of the mind control. That's a place that really needs to break it in a lot of ways. It's not good enough, that we simply stop and frisk in New York. It has to go further than that. There's a lot of things for the independent businessman, like this little bar, which is nothing to nobody. It's just a great place for metalheads to go hang out like myself. It needs to stop being afraid of these guys. It needs to stand up for something. And it does need social support. Otherwise, I understand why he's got to be afraid. But social support needs to be driven to help these guys get out of those clutches.
I agree. Yeah, it takes courage to do that, and a lot of the times they don't want. It's also about money, Steve, because these guys will get fined if they don't have an ID from you. That's what it boils down to. It's about money and getting fined, probably.
They're not really going to get fined if they can show that the person was not under 21. I mean, it's a hassle for them. They don't want to risk the hassle. That's the thing. They need to be
but you know what? The bar truly can't be held liable if all of a sudden, like, the cops come in to raid the place and the answer that I would give if I was there in that situation, it says you have no jurisdiction over me. Then at the end of the day, the bar is off the hook for that very, very reason. Because that's all I'm telling a cop if I ever get pulled over, because I'm traveling. I travel. I don't drive. I'm not participating in traffic or commerce. And, I know who I am now.
Does that work for you? I know you've been pulled over before, but has that worked for you in the past?
I haven't been pulled over yet without carrying, but it is not in my future to do so.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, I like your photo, by the way. Nice guitar shot. Yeah, I can tell you're a little bit over 21. Yeah.
Just a teeny bit. Even if I was, say, 19, right? At the end of the day, if I was 19 and you hear me as I am, at the end of the day, I'm a grown man. I can make my own decisions. I'm aware of my own body, my own mental capabilities, and at the end, and also, if I was 19, maybe I got a fake ID. Guess what? Fake ID or not, you still sold liquor to somebody under 21. But legally, it's like, who cares? Oh, and legally, you're off the hook. And that's part of the moral corruption going on over here.
Yeah, sad to hear that. But, yeah, it is. So it needs to change without a doubt. But I appreciate you calling, Steve.
Yes, thank you. I'll let you finish up with you guys. A great show. I've been listening since the start.
Awesome. Thanks. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. That's the one and only Steve Travesty. And the only one I allow with a backstage pass to my show. Now, there are quite a few, actually. But as long as they're nice. So, Steve, I'm so happy to have you on tonight. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, and I appreciate everything you bring to the table this evening. Is there anything else we didn't get to discuss about Mars that you wanted to mention real brief? And also, let's talk about your website.
Well, wanted to mention that the polar caps on Mars are mostly water ice, as Percival Lowell said, and Oregon astronomer said. It's not cold enough for carbon dioxide ice in most places on Mars. It's not nearly as cold as they're saying. NASA's released the real temperature data on Mars, but it's contradicted by the press release temperature data that they put out. Also, whether or not there's life on a certain place is much more determined on Earth, at least, and probably everywhere, by not by how cold it gets in the winter, but how warm it gets in the summer. So that's why there's vegetation near the South Pole, the South Pole of Mars in the Antarctic region, because that's what there's the most liquid water in the summertime.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It gets about freezing in for a few months in the summer, and then plants can grow. And in the wintertime, because on Earth, the plants are just dormant and don't grow. Yeah. Exactly.
Well, what is your website one more time? If people want to get a hold of you, how would they do that? What's the best way to do that?
It's www.alienevidenceinc.webs.com. and my email is s_Colbern@yahoo.com.
Excellent. And Steve, are you going to be at the Super Soldier Summit doing implant analysis scans?
Yeah, I plan to go, yeah.
Excellent. Good. Well, I'll see you out there then. And, of course, I'm sure everybody's familiar with Steve. If you're not, check out his work with the implant analysis. Of course, he's done that for me with my documentary DVD, and it's incredible. I really appreciate the work you're doing, Steve, with that as well. And also, one more question I did have for you. If anybody's trying to call on you guys, I'm not going to answer that call because we're getting ready to wrap the show up pretty soon. But do you think Mars has some stargates? And if you do, where would you suspect would be a location?
I really don't know, but if one were to look for such an artifact, I would say near some of the areas that appear to be inhabited or were inhabited in the past, like Cydonia, and in the Syrtis Major region, there were some settlements sighted in Hale Crater. Another place where there was some possible civilization evidence, as evidence in the Mars Global Surveyor images. Near the South Pole is another possible habitation. Just near any place where there's beings currently residing or have resided in the past, I would check those areas.
Yeah, I wonder about that myself.
The Cydonia area I would check first.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You know what I'm also attracted to are the poles for some reason for navigation, for celestial navigation, and what I would call maybe time dilation portals or something like that where you could actually transfer without a ship. Now, I don't know why, but it just seems to me like those would be the right areas for that, something with a vortex or gravity or anti-gravitational field, natural field. What is your take on that?
I'm not sure, but the poles would definitely be an area where there might be some disruptions in the normal gravitational field. And speaking of stargates, there's a story going around. There's been a story going around for years. The military has a portal whereby people can teleport to Mars, and if they have a permanent base on Mars. I don't know if that's true or not, but it may be.
Well, that's not the jump room, though, right?
The jump room is yeah, I like to call it the jump room.
Is that affiliated with? Yeah.
I think it's in Alice Springs, Australia, according to the rumor story.
Well, I've heard about the jump rooms. Obviously, we've all heard about those, and people supposedly doing that. I do know that you can teleport without a doubt. I mean, we've proven that we can do that. So, and it's all about molecular control and also vibrational speed and frequency. Once again, you're dealing with vibrations and harmonics, and you know, when you vibrate things at a certain level, it can teleport. I think it's fascinating, personally. I'd like to be able to teleport somewhere and go home.
Well,
you know, it's like Star Trek. You know, everything they had in Star Trek was actually right on. When you think about it.
Yeah, some of the Star Trek movies, Mr. Scott was saying that we needed to transport from one planet to another, isn't that what you're doing? And,
yeah, I mean, you beam people up and down. Now, doesn't that make more sense than taking a big old ship somewhere?
Yeah, I think there's limitations to it, though. I think you probably have to take ships for much longer distances, like interstellar distances, but who knows?
Yeah, that would make sense, too. Well, Star Trek was, obviously, I love Star Trek, and I'm sure you do, too. I grew up with that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, thank goodness Americans grew up with Star Trek. Otherwise, we'd be a mess, right?
I would think so, yeah. I mean, the people are intelligent, became more so by watching Star Trek.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Good ideas in that show.
Yeah, it'll give you a higher IQ without a doubt. But we're getting ready to wrap this up pretty soon. But, hey, Steve, I want to thank you again for being on the show tonight. It's always a pleasure to have you on, and I consider you a very good friend. And I have so much respect for who you are and what you do. And I know everybody appreciates you. So thank you very much for being on tonight. And you're always welcome to come back whenever you get new information, whatever it is you're working on with those implant analysis, let us know. Okay? And yeah.
Can't wait to be on again.
Oh, I can't wait to have you on again. I always enjoy talking to you. Although we do get in this little thing where we go on this other dimension and start going on and on about stuff, but that's just the way it rolls. So anyways, please join me next week when my special guest will be Charles Oatsman. He's a scientist, and that should be very interesting. And also stay tuned for Shiny Side Out with David Dunger and Becky coming on next to sail you on to the night from down under, of course. And I think that's about it. And once again, we'll be able to see you probably at the Super Soldier Summit, Steve, on May 29th, 30th.
All right. I'll see you there.
Excellent. Okay, everybody. And I think that's about it. I think we're just about ready to roll out here. We have about 2 minutes left, actually. So is there anything else I didn't mention that you want to cover real quick in less than 2 minutes, Steve?
The polar caps being mostly water ice. The canals that Lowell mentioned that are evident in the Mars Global Surveyor images, straight couple mile wide channels that go throughout the planet, start near the North Polar Cap, as he said. Just about everything Principal Lowell said about Mars has turned out to be true.
Well, that's good.
That's one piece of evidence that indicates that the Martian atmosphere is probably thicker than NASA's been saying, because it's difficult to see how Lowell and his colleagues could have been off by an order of magnitude, and they're right on about everything else.
Right. Well, one thing you won't see, I guess, are a bunch of satellites, junk satellites everywhere around it, huh? just the ones put there by NASA, I think. Space junk.
Although Phobos is probably an alien base. It's probably hollow. A Russian astronomer a while back calculated its mass, or approximate mass, from its rate of orbital decay, and he said it was hollow, and that does turn out to be, or it seems to be the case.
Do you think it's manufactured?
Either manufactured or hollowed out, just like our moon.
Well, that's interesting. But is the moon hollowed out because of mining? Because of all the things they've been doing to it?
Yeah, I think it's just been our moon. I think it's been mined so long that it's partially hollow now.
That's terrible, and that tells me that it's going to break orbit. Actually, that tells me that it probably won't stay where it's at. What do you think? It will
eventually. It's on the verge of breaking orbit now. It's at the edge of the Earth's gravitational field.
You know what's really interesting? A long time ago, I think it was back in the 90s, I had a dream about the moon breaking orbit and heading towards Jupiter. I don't know how real that was, but I thought it was interesting nonetheless.
I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon unless the aliens actually propel it, but it will eventually. The Earth's rotation is slowing down, and it's transferring that energy to the moon's kinetic energy, and it's spiraling out from the Earth. As a result, it's eventually going to break orbit, all right.
Right, and on that note, everybody, well, have a wonderful weekend. Thank you again, Steve. I appreciate everybody listening at Revolution Radio. Take care, everybody. Be safe. Have a great week.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio.